Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Velero community meeting slash open discussion. I can't speak today. We're gonna walk through a bunch of status updates, and then we have some discussion topics. And yeah, we'll do it as we usually do. So I'll share my screen here so everyone can see the agenda. And if you have anything you want to add into the agenda, I'm gonna share the link as well. So get started here. There we go. And first up for status updates, we have Nolan.
Yeah, so on Friday, the Data Protection Working Group kicked off. I guess a really brief summary of that meeting. It was mostly figuring out what topics the group wants to cover first and how the group's going to work together. The working group has a very big charter. It's trying to cover a lot of ground, and it's also trying to figure out how to work together to start out with. So there's going to be a lot of different topics that they're covering, and I think they're going to try to split off into smaller groups that will try to tackle individual things and then come back together in the larger group on an alternating weekly basis and discuss those with the larger group. I think the issue that we're going to try to participate on is kind of the larger goals of like what does backup look like for Kubernetes? What are the backup workflows? And define the high level problems and then work on solutions from there. So agree with community on what the high level problems are, and then see what we can do about working on common solutions from there. And got folks from Google, traditional backup vendors like Veeam and Veritas, I can go look up some links to docs for that and toss them in this when I'm done with my update. And then for Velero, last week I had mentioned there was the CRD issue on restoring custom resource definitions. And actually still working on this pull request, because as we got further along with this, we actually realized there's a couple different issues at play here. So we have this PR for waiting for them to be ready. And it kind of waited on me to get it done, tested, and then what we found out was while this is useful, there's another issue at hand that Velero doesn't actually recheck the Kubernetes API server when it restores a custom resource definition. So what will happen is in some cases, you'll restore the custom resource definition, but then the custom resources won't show up in the same restore action. So you'll have to run Velero restore again, and then your custom resources will show up. So Steve and I sat down and thought through this, and I have a solution up in this PR, and it works for the case that we had in front of us, but I think there's a better longer term solution that I note in the PR, and I think there's an associated issue that I want to put in. I just hadn't gotten to it in last week. Basically, after we restore a custom resource definition, we update our list of resources from the Kubernetes API, and then continue on with the restore. So hoping to get that done this week and get a v1.2.1 out. This goes with I forget the PR number, but that goes hand in hand with another PR that's related to restores. And then finally for CSI, there's not a whole lot of update on that front. I was working on support and trying to figure out 1937 and related issues. And Ashish was at orientation for VMware. So he and I need to coordinate this week to see what we can get started on the CSI snapshot work, so we can get that rolling for 1.3.
Hey, Nolan, do you think it would make sense to go with the I guess kind of hackier solution that you have in place now for the 1.2.1, just in the interest of getting it out sooner, and then maybe circle back on the refactoring as part of 1.3?
Maybe. Honestly, I don't know. I'll have to look at it again. The hackier solution was the initial pass is basically. I think I need to clean it up a little bit because there's some literally copy pasted code in there that can definitely be cleaned out. But basically, what the code does there is it reruns it. We do our restore loop, and then after that, we re-query the Kubernetes API server and say, "Hey, what's new stuff that we didn't that we see now that we didn't restore before?" And then we run through that. We run through our tarball again and restore anything that we didn't see. I was mostly running that on a very, very small test. So before I say that we would commit to that, I would want to test it on some other things. But that may be an option. And then we could test, but like it worked for a small case where I was testing with cluster API, a cluster API control cluster in kind. But I don't know if that is generalizable at the moment.
Okay, well, we can discuss further on the PR. I just want to make sure that we get the 1.2.1 out relatively soon, and I also want to make sure that we can get going on the CSI work. So
that's fair.
If this is blocking it right now, then if we can sort of free that up, that'd be good. But we can keep discussing on the PR and figure out what makes sense.
Yep, that's fair.
Cool.
But just on the context, this was discovered while restoring cluster API CRDs.
Yeah. So the issue that's tying to this is 2159. So it was reported by our field engineer, Duffy Cooley. And so there's actually like 3 or 4 issues at play. There was the CRD API extension version mismatch. So we had V1 beta 1 and V1 API versions being restored, and that through Velero for a loop. So there's a much smaller, well, not actually, it got bigger. There's another PR that corrects the client that's being used to restore those. And it also introduces a plugin that adjusts the schema fields that are restored for a CRD, so that if it detects that it's a structural CRD coming in for V1 and it's got if it's got fields that are set that we know will not work, then it will go adjust those so that they're valid. Then it also introduces this PR that we're talking about now has some Velero logic fixes where we wait for the custom resource definition to be ready on the API server, so that we're not running into this race condition where the custom resource definition is restored, but it's not accepting custom resources yet. And we're making sure right now, as of today, Velero goes to the API server, collects all the known API groups, and then goes and restores. But that actually makes it difficult to restore CRDs because the known API groups changes in the middle of a restore if you're restoring CRDs because you're adding API groups.
Yeah.
So
True.
this is to make that a little bit more complete. We're going to adjust the behavior so that Velero will requery for API groups and then resubmit any new API groups. How exactly we do that is kind of the up in the air part right now.
Yeah.
Steve and I had a couple different implementations that we talked about because we didn't want to go in and rip up a ton of restore code.
Yeah.
But there's like, as far as we know right now, there were 3 separate issues. There was, or 4 even. There was a client versioning mismatch that between the V1 and V1 Beta 1 CRD clients on restore.
Mm-hmm.
And backup. So that's 5 issues. So then there was for the V1, anything that came in as a custom resource definition V1 that had preserve unknown fields true, we had to migrate that to the OpenAPI schema properties versus being directly in the top level because the Kubernetes API server would complain. Then we had this open PR that's been open for a while because it was just known that Velero would just like restore stuff as fast as possible and move on, including the CRDs. So that's been sitting open, and we wanted to make Velero wait to restore the custom resource definition, make sure it was ready, and then move on. And then finally, it's rediscover all the API groups each time we restore to make sure we have a complete view of what the Kubernetes API server has.
Okay. And we also want to perform restores in like 2 iterations, one to restore the actual CRDs, and then any resources that have been created for those CRDs.
Yeah, what I was trying to avoid was like doing a 2-pass thing because ideally, like this would require redoing the whole restore logic. Ideally, what I would like to see is we scan through the whole backup and do our like include exclude logic and say, this is the directed graph that we have that we want to restore before we do any kind of API server logic, so that we know upfront what we want to do. But that's way bigger changes. That's been something we've wanted to do for a while, I think, but it's just not going to happen for a dot or a patch release. But yeah, for this we want to say each time, and really there can be optimizations here to say, oh, we just got done restoring a custom resource definition, or we got done restoring custom resource definitions. As far as I know, that's the only thing that modifies the API groups. So then we could say, hey, update discovery. I don't think anything else modifies the API server groups, but that's kind of where Steve and I had landed. And we had talked about like optimizing it so that we can move some of that discovery into the higher level restore loop and some things like that. But I think those are implementation details, and like Steve said, we might be able to move some of that off to optimizations later.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments for Nolan? All right, moving on to Steve.
Yeah, so a handful of things. So first of all, I'm the community support person for this week, so updated the Slack channel topics, and I'll be keeping an eye on that and trying to get through any of the open issues and PRs that we have in GitHub. Last week worked on a handful of different things. So I got a PR in for this issue. We have a Prometheus metric, which is a gauge metric, and it records the last successful timestamp for each backup schedule. And the problem is that whenever the Velero server restarts, so when a new pod gets created or when the pod gets restarted, this metric gets cleared out and it's never reinitialized. So took a look at this and put in a relatively straightforward fix to just reinitialize this metric for each schedule when the server restarts. So that one's ready for review whenever everyone gets a chance to look at it. I'll have to wait for the agenda to pop back up. Yeah, there's another issue reported by Dylan Murray from Red Hat where Restic Restore, there was a Restic Restore that failed, but the Velero Restore still ended up reporting successful completion, which shouldn't happen. So if a Restic Restore fails, then the overall restore should fail. So I took a look at this and it looks like there was a race condition in some of the code that was essentially collecting results from the Restic processes and reporting them back up to the main restore. So I changed how that worked a little bit. Basically got rid of some of the code that had the race condition and put in what I think is a more straightforward solution. So I've tested this. It looks okay to me, but this one's also ready for review whenever folks get a chance. And then, yeah, spent time looking at the CRD restore issues that Nolan talked about, and also reviewed Carlisia's initial design PR for the install and config stuff for revamping the UX there, and had some discussions with the team. So that I think mostly covers it, and a few other random things, PR reviews and looking at issues. But that's about all for me.
All right. Any questions, comments to see? All right, moving on to Ashish.
Yeah, so as Nolan mentioned, I wasn't in the office. I was in Palo Alto last week, or most of last week, but I was able to make some progress on like the GCP CSI driver. That was kind of I wasn't able to install that or set up my project to install the as a precursor to the CSI driver. So I kind of worked around that and unblocked myself. I will be installing the CSI driver on a GKE cluster to play with the snapshot APIs and kind of make some progress there. Also, last week, I was able to get some traction on my execution hooks PR. So hopefully that should be, or a major chunk of it should be getting merged this week. So that's all I have as updates.
All right. Any questions, comments for Ashish? All right. Carlisia, you're up.
Hello. I don't think anybody mentioned that yesterday was a US holiday and also a holiday for VMware folks. So today I'm going to start with reviewing PRs. I think I did drop the ball on that the last 2 days of last week. And I focused on this PR last week. We also had a meeting between the Velaro members, core members, and we recorded it. And I added the link. It's posted on our YouTube playlist. If anybody is interested in going through what we discussed. So the proposal that I made on this PR was well accepted, and mainly we're going to split. Right now we have a CLI install command, and that's going to go away. So we're going to have we're going to break things down into an init command, a config command. And that config command is only going to deal with locations, both backup and snapshots. And then at any rate, everything is in that PR. I do need to update the PR with the comments that were made already. And one thing that I have to do is write down, I'm working on this, write down what changes in the Velero that we're going to need to do to make this Y function. And also, one thing that came out of our meeting is that this CLI flow needs to be GitOps compatible. And it might be a matter of making it compatible with Customize. So I was also looking at how Customize works. But at any rate, I'm not clear on how to ensure that just yet. But I'm working on that too. And that's it.
Cool. Any questions, comments for Kalicia? All right. So I'll add in a small thing here. I think it was 2 weeks ago, I briefly talked about having a GitHub integrated CMS system for new docs and things like that. I spoke a little to Nolan about this offline as well. I think the system that I looked at is not a good fit for Velero here and the things that we do. So I'm gonna scratch that. But if I find something else that might fit in with the current workflow, I might bring it up again. But right now, I'm gonna scrap that. All right, moving into discussion topics. Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention, I know everyone's busy and working on stuff, but we got a bit of a PR backlog. So if everyone can take some time this week, preferably earlier in the week, and just go through things and do some reviews, that'd be great. I've tried to keep them on the ZenHub board somewhat ordered. So the ones that are at the top of the review QA pipeline are the ones that are kind of ready for merge, assuming that they are okay on review. We also have some that are, not necessarily ready for merge yet, and those are kind of more towards the bottom of that pipeline. But so anyway, if everyone can spend a little bit of time on this this week, that'd be great.
All right. Any questions or comments or concerns from the community members on the call? Anything you want to bring up? Open discussion.
Hi, this is Mayank.
Hi there. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. So I'm working on OpenWS project, and we have Velero plugin for our sister data engine. Okay, so now we are working on the data protection project, and we are considering to use Velero for snapshot and restoring the snapshot. So recently in Velero, we have one change regarding the PV renaming. So, but in that change, Velero is not considering PV name from the snapshot from the plugin. So I'm just curious if it is from the design, or we can have this change to consider the name from the volume snapshot plugin for PV.
I didn't totally catch what the issue was. Could you restate what the problem is that you're having?
Yeah, so in Systore, we are creating some storage assets while restoring the snapshot. So this storage assets have name which is similar to the PV name. Now, while renaming the PV, Velero creates PV with the Velero clone some UID. And here in the C store, we have this storage assets with some different name. So here comes the usability issue, because user won't be able to figure out the storage assets from the PV name. So if Velero gets the PV name from the storage snapshot, snapshot plugin, and use that PV name while renaming the PV.
Is there an open issue for this?
No, I haven't created issue, but in Slack, I have actually discussed this with Nolan, but I couldn't follow it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember you mentioning this. Yeah, so if I'm recalling, it's
Mayank, if you have a link to your Slack conversation, can you share it with everyone so that everyone can quickly read through?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I'm using through the mobile, so.
Okay.
I will tag Nolan in that issue.
You know your Slack ID?
Yes, yeah, it's Mayank only, I think.
I've copied it into the Zoom chat.
Okay. I think I found it too.
So in this, I have also shared the changes that is required for this issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone has thoughts on this now. I'm wondering if it might be easier to follow up on offline. It sounds like there's probably some detail to dig into here that might be difficult to do live.
Yeah, and also if you found Mayank, if you found your changes to be working for you, I would suggest opening up an issue and a PR to go with it. That would help us evaluate better and get this also merged if it all makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds. I remember you bringing this up, and I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. It sounds like we're not doing a brief summary of the issue. It sounds like Velero is not doing the right thing when it comes to OpenEBS. Is that a correct statement?
Yes. So we should Velero should consider the PV name from the snapshot volume snapshotter also. Like in Kubernetes, it has for this entry plugin. So if a cloud provider creates some storage assets and it gives the PV name while provisioning, then Kubernetes also uses that name for the PV.
Okay.
So I will create an issue for this.
Yeah,
that would be. I think that would be best. We can follow up that way to make sure it doesn't get lost in the Slack conversation here as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Any other open discussion topics?
Yeah, actually, I had a question, Jonas. So my name is Anthony from Delhi MC. So right now I have a question regarding the Velero pre and post hooks. The problem I'm running into is I'm trying to run some command before I back up, let's say like a MySQL pod. And right now with the pre-backup hook, I can actually run the command, but the issue is that let's say I want to reference some secret, let's say some credentials to connect to the MySQL server, and I want to read those secrets from within the hook command. Do you guys know of a good way I can do that? Because right now it seems reading the secret from within that hook command, the pre-backup hook. I'm still trying to see if there's a way I can do it, but just wanted to ask you guys if you have any ideas on that.
Hey, Anthony, I would think, I mean, you could, one option would be to just have that secret mounted into the pod that you're running the hook in, so that you can just read it as a file or an environment variable or something.
Right.
You could also have your hook just have your hook execute a bash script that's included in your pod, and that, you know, if you have a script, it may be easier to actually write the code to query the secret. Those are the two thoughts I had off the top of my head.
Yeah, because thinking of a way to just query the secret, because you know, depending on how the pod was configured, that could be, you know, out of control. You could have different configurations for that. So in general, we're just looking for if there's a way for us to do it from within the hook, maybe through the Golang, you know, natively.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's the hooks can be arbitrary, you know, an arbitrary command, so that, but there's nothing specific that Velero will give you there as far as being able to query the API server.
Okay, and then a leading question to that would be, have you guys done anything in regards to like app consistent backups of, let's say, databases, MySQL, Postgres within Velero?
Nothing specific, no. So I mean, you know, part of the thinking behind adding the hooks capability was to give users the ability to sort of configure commands that would enable them to do that, but we don't have any specific code within Velero to deal with that. No.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's part of our like working with the data protection working group, is to find things to do that, to help get better overall stories for that in Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys. Yeah, that's all I had.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, the last question is definitely something that's been discussed on many calls, and yeah, we're hoping to have the working group look more into that. All right. Any other open discussion topics? All right, then we'll move into the contributor shoutouts. Steve, do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, sure. First up, we have Jay Nolte. I think John's on the call, who put in a PR last week for updating some permissions on, I think maybe I have a typo here in the description, but updating permissions on the Velero config directory and file, just to make things a little bit more secure. So appreciate that change. And then we had SCGO Scott from Red Hat, who also put in a PR to fix a bug around Restic repositories with the last maintenance time field. So in the scenario where this was nil for some reason, there would actually end up being a panic in the Velero server. So so appreciate that fix as well. So thanks to both of you.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, with that, we're gonna end this week's community meeting and open discussion. If you have any other discussion topics, please add them into the HackMD for the next meeting, or hit us up on Slack. And with that, have a fantastic week, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.